So how do you tell a full, satisfying story in 30 minutes?
You need to start things fast. If you're going to take shortcuts, do it early. I'd rather get that out fast and then let the rest of the episode play at the regular pace.
Hello, welcome to ARC Studio Presents. I'm Micah, Cratty, a WGA screenwriter and the head of writing at ARC Studio, like it says below, and I couldn't write if it wasn't true. ARC Studio is the best screenwriting app in the world. You can check it out at arcstudiopro.com, and there's a link in the description below. Put your virtual hands together for Chris Harris. Chris, how you doing, man?
Very good. How are you, sir?
I am doing awesome. I am so excited to have you here today to talk about sitcoms and TV writing. If you don't know Chris, he's written for a ton of shows. Recently, he ran the FRASIER reboot, and he did Acapulco. Prior to that, he was an executive producer on How I Met Your Mother. He was on that show for a long time. And then way back in the day, he was a writer on The Late Show with David Letterman. What are the lessons about writing or comedy writing that you learned at Letterman that kind of have served you throughout your career?
A big one, and this was definitely learning it the hard way, there's always another idea. You know, there's always, you trust yourself that your well is not dry and you're not going to run out of things. And that was a especially tough lesson those first few months, because up until then, I was probably very overly precious about my writing. You know, and it's like, oh, you can't cut that paragraph in that article because that's that, or you know, keeping the list and all these files of different kinds of ideas and things like that. And at Letterman, literally you come in at 9:30 in the morning, and sometimes you don't leave for over 12 hours, and you're just getting assignments, you know, over and over again. New books by this time, game show, funny questions and answers by this time. We need ideas for a live act 1, and this time, and top 10 list comes in, more top 10, more top 10, more top 10. So it doesn't matter if you're not feeling creative that day. It doesn't matter if you think you're out of ideas. That's your job is to write. And one of the results of that is not worrying about I'm all out, because over and over again at Letterman, you're not given the choice of being out. And that's, I would say that served me as well as anything else over the years, whether I'm a writer on a staff and the showrunner still doesn't think that we have that right idea for the second episode yet, or when I'm a showrunner and whether it's a single joke that we say, well, this is an impossible spot. No, it's not impossible. Or we've created a story that we like and the studio hates it, or we've created an outline that the studio likes and we like and the network hates it. Okay, let's adjust it. Or we think this story should be A, somebody else thinks the story should be B. I bet there's a C. I bet there's a C and probably a D and E and an E and F and a G that we haven't thought of yet, which is kind of, you know, in a sense, it was like, it was this kind of inspiring lesson that was learned just by sheer grueling work. Yeah. But I love it. It's comforting to know that the ideas will keep coming. That's what we do. We're creative.
I think that's an incredibly important thing. I mean, one thing I've noticed, there are a couple things like on that. Sometimes I'll see writers talking about, like, they have like an early script and they're like, okay, but this is kind of a practice script. I have this idea. I have this great idea, and I want to save it for later. You know, like when I don't want to waste it or something like that. And I love that idea. It's just like, you're going to have another idea. Like if you hold off, if you wait for you to use your good idea, you're never going to use it. You like just do it, and then you'll have another one. And you know,
the writer Jonathan Groff phrases it as "eat the big crabs." Like you've got big crabs, then eat them. These little crabs will grow big by the time you need more big crabs. Like so it's just like, yeah, you got a great big idea. Don't save it. There are going to be more. It's exactly right. Totally true.
I think that's one thing that's changed as I've developed as a writer. It's not that I don't get stuck or I don't like, it's just that I believe more that I'll figure something out, you know, like it's trust that I can do it.
You know, I talk a lot about you're doing a crossword puzzle, you get stuck in one corner. Let me go look at this other corner for a while. And then you come back to that corner. It's like, oh, this is obvious. I know this. And I feel like that's writing a lot of times. That's why, you know, tangentially, I always love having multiple projects going on at once, whether that means multiple shows or a show and a book or multiple episodes, or, even different, if I'm writing a script, different scenes in the same script open at the same time, because I find, for myself at least, it's if I get stuck or bogged down in one spot, I'd rather not bang my head against that for an hour. I'd rather like pop over to somewhere else where the writing is easy, and then I'll come back, and somewhere in the back of my mind, it turns out I've been thinking about that scene, just like somewhere in the back of my mind, that crossword puzzle clue has been sitting there.
I mean, you kind of answered in part there, but like, so that's one of the strategies it seems like when you do. Are there other things that you do, kind of when you hit that writer's block? Or
yeah, the big thing is how do I keep my brain going, but in a different speed or in a different way, and then you have to step away sometimes. I find that if I'm doing a low level activity, even if it's like a computer game or something like that, that's helpful for, like, I'm mindlessly doing this, but I'm actually, and part of my mind is still turning over this thought in the back of my head. So I think the least effective strategy for me is forcing myself to just stare at the same spot on the script until I get it. I feel like that's the toughest part.
Was it hard to transition from late night, where it's just be funny, to sitcom writing, which you still have to be funny, but now there's character and story and all these other elements to it? It
was a challenge, but to me, the biggest challenge was just going to Letterman, because I think by the time I was moving out to LA and starting to work in sitcoms, I knew that that's what I'd wanted to do. I'd worked on it a little bit. I talked to people who had made that transition. So I sort of, even if there was a long way to go, I at least had an idea of what the hurdles are. And what you said is exactly true, where it's not just jokes anymore. It's characters and it's situations. And for a while, it was easier to translate jokes into, here's a funny situation, or here's an interesting situation. And I think the character work and realizing just how important the character is and how much it's more important than anything else, that took longer. At Letterman, we're doing skits, we're doing bits. We're like, here's an absurd idea. Here's something that's so ridiculous, we're going to make you laugh. And then the more we're watching, some of the classic half-hour shows, the absurdity isn't here's this absurd idea that we're just throwing into the world. It's really just, here's this absurd situation that's absurd because of the character, and we know what they want. I think that's probably the thing that took me the longest to really internalize. I was speaking with another comedy writer recently, Brent Forrester, and he said something along the lines of, like, he realized that, like, the more serious it got, the funnier it was. And there's something in that, like, when you're like true to like the reality of like the character's situation and what they're scared of and what they really want, and all that things, like, the funnier it seems to get. When you're thinking of developing an idea for a sitcom, or just, we can say a comedy in general, what do you like to start with? Is it a character, a premise, a world you're interested in? Yeah. I mean, honestly, and this is true both for creating a show idea and also if you're in a show thinking about episodes. Some people will swear you have to start with the emotional core. Some people will say you got to start with the big funny idea. I think it can come from any direction, to tell the truth. And in terms of my writing, I'm happy with any idea that I like. No, I don't, I'm not particular about where it comes from. I'm just happy to have it. Yeah. And thinking about pilots I've done and episodes I've written, sometimes we're like, let's do something that really gets at the fact that this person thinks that they're the same person they were 20 years ago, but they're not. And that's the realization. Or these two people keep missing each other, and they're in that cycle, or whatever it is. This person, the dream that they gave up on suddenly comes back to at the when they least expect it. Whatever any of these sort of tropey but sort of universal feelings. I don't know. I feel like they can come from any direction, basically. I don't think there's a right answer. I think more and more these days, as we were talking about, if you're looking for something that's going to break through all of the barriers or get through all of the hoops, you do need that. that splashy idea is really helpful. I haven't read about the origins of Severance, but like there's an idea that okay, there's a great concrete idea, and you can almost feel the emotional stuff come out of that idea. Like what's natural with this you have this idea that the work life and the separation of work and home, what if it's really a thing and you're actually two different people? Okay, what would that do? What kind of person would exist in that world? What kind of stories would be really interesting? You know, I feel like you can build the emotions from the high concept idea sometimes.
Writers have lots of ideas. Some are good, some are bad. Are there any characteristics you think they're like, oh, this one's worth pursuing? Like how do you sometimes know like if it has legs as an expression, or like, yes, like this is it just an excitement you feel, or are there actual kind of analytical characteristics of those kind of ideas?
Yeah, I don't know if analytics definitely. I don't know if there is. My favorite moments with characters are those characters where I haven't necessarily seen, and this is as a viewer, for example, like a character that I don't know if I've seen this character before, but I know that guy. Like, I know that type of person. Like the you know, and I have a friend who does a lot of pitching who loves to sort of find those super simple ways to, like, she's the kind of person who slows down at green lights. Okay, I know that kind of person, you know. Carter and Craig, I feel like, you know, when they came up with Barney as a character, it's like, oh, I know that guy. He talks a big talk. I'm going to teach you how to live and everything. I'm going to take. He just the person who needs to be the mentor to someone else in order to make himself feel great. It's like, oh, I've had friends like that over the years. I feel like if you can tap into that familiarity, but the familiarity in real life, but not necessarily as familiar on the screen, then you've got something really special there. And those are tough to find. But I think they're the things that attract us most to a character.
When you have that idea of a character, how do you build from almost a type or not necessarily a trope, but like, yeah, maybe a type of like, oh, that the person who would do this, to a fully fledged kind of human being, you know?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things you mentioned is one of the starting points, which is, you know, what do they want? There's that classic, what do they want versus what do they need? What's the gap between those two things? Is there a way where they don't get what they want in the pilot, but they take a step forward toward what they need, whether they know it or not? Those are, you know, sort of the building blocks of a character that you're starting out on a journey that could go 6 episodes or it could go, you know, 200, depending on what your story is. I think finding the contrasts, finding the ways that you okay, here's the stock character, but also this. That's why you see characters, you know, I can't think of the right example off the top of my head, but the character who has this very specific hobby. Those are such great details where you say, oh, yeah, he's a blowhard, but he also really cares about, his Hummel figure collection. Or, you know, sometimes something can feel like, well, this doesn't make sense for the character because they're the opposites. But if you really know the character, then embodying those contrasts and those paradoxes within the character will make it actually feel more real.
So, you know, like we've talked about that these sitcoms are episodic. The journey kind of ends at the end. So how do you tell a full, satisfying story in 30 minutes? Are there certain structural things that you're like, oh, I need to hit this by this act break, or how do you approach it?
Yeah, I mean, you need to start things fast, and you know, it helps to, if you're going to take shortcuts, or you're going to fudge something because you're compressed for time, what I've learned over the years is do it early, like take the medicine early. I'd rather get that out fast and then let the rest of the scene play and the rest of the episode play at the regular pace. One thing we've done on, you know, How I Met Your Mother had always had an A story, a B story, sometimes a C story. And I feel like one difference that I've been on in shows since then is embracing an A story, where maybe, you know, if you've got 6 or 7 regular cast members, maybe not every single one of them needs to have an arc in every episode. Maybe this person just has one great big scene, and that's their moment in this episode, versus trying to squeeze in an A story and a B story and a runner. So that's one thing, is sort of finding one main story to carry us through versus two stories that both have multiple beats.
How much are you thinking of the comedy during the story phase versus, in the script, writing the joke kind of on the page? Are you thinking about comedy the entire time, or are you saving that more for the draft?
It's wonderful if you're doing both at the same time, because I think the best comedy, if you're saving it for the draft, you'll find the jokes and you'll find the comedy, but it might mean that it's not coming from the character in the situation as much. And I feel like that's the best. That's the stuff that, at least for me, makes me laugh the hardest, is I'm laughing because this character is in the exact situation that he spent the last 12 minutes trying to avoid. There are definitely sometimes where it's like, this is a long, serious scene where this person is finally, the mom's finally telling the son what she thinks of him, and or whatever that is, or there's going to be some big emotional thing, and then we need something to break the tension here, or this is, these are two friends talking about how their friendship has changed over the years. So it's serious, but it's not super serious. We need a third person over here who's got their head stuck in something to just sort of to just keep the laughter going as we're doing it. So there are ways where you can add laughter to scenes, but definitely in the last few episodes I've been in, can we find what's inherently funny in the situation versus can we add humor to the scene that we already know we have to write? In
a sitcom, your character can't grow, or at least they can't grow very fast.
No,
right?
They take the same step forward over
and over again. So how do you? I mean, I don't know that. I don't think there's an easy answer to this, but how do you make that a feature, not a bug? Is there something about those kind of characters that the audience is willing to go on the same journey with them over and over again?
It's tricky because if you do it too much, then it's going to feel frustrating where the characters don't grow. And the truth is, even older sitcoms, there is, and I think this is good, there is a bit of a warmth that usually creeps in between or among the characters. Usually the attitudes in the first season, especially in the first few episodes, are much harsher than they are in later seasons. Take Carla at Cheers, for example, just coming out of the gate, just bam, 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 and still never loses that sharpness. But there's fond, at least I as a viewer felt much more fondness coming from her for the people in the bar than I necessarily remember in earlier seasons. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing. I also think we're in an era where we might want a little bit more of that. We say that sitcom characters don't change. There is room for progression in sitcoms these days, and I think I think one of the joys of the first season or so of a half-hour show is let's take this character over here and this regular character over here. We haven't done a story that pairs the two of them yet. What are they going to have to talk about with each other? I remember it took us forever on How I Met Your Mother before Robin and Marshall had a story with each other. And we realized that deep into the season, it's like, oh my God, what do these two have to say to each other? Well, they have very huge differences of opinion in terms of love and romance and very different experiences. Let's use that because it's really interesting. And they probably have some things. They probably have wisdom for each other. They probably have things to convey to each other. And there's probably a little bit of a closeness, just a tiny bit that you might feel in episodes after that episode versus ones before. And it's almost like you find different new ways of telling similar stories. Thinking of Frasier, for example, there are plenty of stories about how Frasier and his father were not close or were different people. And on the newer Frasier, we sort of conveyed that into Frasier and his son. But there are lots and lots of different stories, specific versions of that story. It can be about I never understood you at work, or I never understood, there was always you didn't pay enough attention to me during this time. So there are ways to tell there are themes that are repeating, but hopefully the stories don't repeat necessarily.
There's another element of sitcoms that I wanted to ask you about, which is really interesting, which is that they're notorious for being associated with a place, right? There's McLaren's Pub in How I Met Your Mother, the coffee shop in Seinfeld, Central Perk in Fred. There's a very practical thing here where it's like, well, they just can't be in their apartment the whole time. They need to be somewhere else. Are there other elements to like a good place, a good kind of hangout for your character?
Most of the time, there's that urge for that public place. And one reason is it's nice to get them out of the house. It's nice to get out of the house. And the second reason is anything can happen in there.
Anyone can show up. Anyone can walk in the door.
Show up. Dating stories. If it's that kind of show, you've got a cafe or a bar or something like that is great. Anyone can walk into a diner. Anyone can know that someone works there and stop by and deliver a summons or you run into your college sweetheart or whatever. It just helps because otherwise you're building that equivalent of a set each episode in order to kick off whatever the story is a lot of the time. Now there are plenty of shows that somehow, I don't know why I'm thinking of Sanford and Son, but I feel like they were just always in the junkyard, and they almost never left. Shows can do it,
but it's usually a bar or a coffee shop. I feel like
that's where else, I guess, is the answer. You could do it at a more specific place, but then unless that's what the show is about, does I don't know, it's a dry cleaner. You can do it, but then it just starts to feel weird that everyone's coming into the dry cleaners all the time, or the set overwhelms the story. A bar, another nice thing about a bar or coffee shop, it's just there. No one's questioning it, and it lets the story and the characters take up our attention.
Thanks for hosting this conversation. Graduated last year with MFA, writing, producing, struggling to find an inroad to breaking in. Like so many, I do anything for a writer's PA position. Be staffed one day, but I'm struggling to get my foot in the door. Yeah. I have a strong pilot under my belt. I'm applying to fellowships, placing competitions, but what else can I be doing? I'm feeling lost. Would love to hear your thoughts.
First of all, I sympathize. It is tough. Like that. Like I don't think there's an easy solution. Some pieces of advice that I unfortunately are vague, and Micah, I'm sure you can speak to this too. Keep writing is the most important thing. Keep reaching out. Find the connections that you can. I think people who find writing, like I think it's easier to find other like-minded people or people in the position that you are. And I know that even back when I was starting out and friends were starting out, those groups that you form as you're just entering, you'll be surprised at how often one person hears about a PA job and gets a PA job, and then they're able to let this group know, oh, we're hiring someone else, come on in. So the more, don't worry about, reach out on your level. Don't worry about reaching up as much too. Because that's going to be important in the medium and long term, even if it's not as helpful in the short term.
A couple of things I'll just jump in to say, that's the idea. Networking ladder, that's the thing. You're going to go through the wars together. You have to think long term in this, basically. But I can give an example because Chris hired me on my first job in TV, and so I can say how that happened was I found Chris's email address in an alumni database. We went to the same college. We didn't know each other, but I just found him and I emailed a bunch of people. Chris emailed me back. He was very nice, and then we had a phone call. And on that phone call, I basically tried to be enthusiastic and not a pain. If you have an opportunity, don't ask. I didn't ask for a job. I didn't ask him to read my script or anything like that. I just asked questions and advice and tell me about your, that kind of a thing. And then the big thing was I moved to LA and I was here. And then I think we met up for coffee and then it was kind of and I was like, oh, I like this guy. He likes me. And then you can kind of chat more but then I think several years passed before, the job happened.
Yeah.
And I, to be honest, found myself struggling at times to be like, I need Chris to remember who I am. How can I, email him or something. Just like, I have to try to keep this. And sometimes it's a struggle. It's hilarious.
All the stars to hitch your wagon to. You pick man. I don't know.
But anyways, but then I was just kind of like, I tried to be cool about it and be like a nice person. And like, and you see an article in Deadline and be like, Chris, congrats, blah, blah. And then finally he created the show, The Goodwin Games. And there was like an opportunity there. And then again, this is years later. And like, it only kind of worked though, because, and this is like the bigger point I'm also trying to get to, is that because like I liked Chris and Chris liked me and there was like and so it's like, try to build honest relationships. Like if I thought Chris was a piece of crap, the entire time, and I was just like doing this just because I thought there was a job there, you can smell that. Like it would have, like, you can tell if people are trying to use you, I would say. So like building honest relationships with people that you like and you want to work with is like the best long-term strategy. Trying to be really like, people can just tell if you're trying to, just get something out of them.
I think that's maybe the most important point. I'll also add, I think you just graduated with MFA. You've got time. I didn't start at Letterman until I was 28. I didn't move out to LA until I was 32. So it didn't get staffed on a show until then. So you've got time, and what's going to make you interesting at 28 and 32 and 36 and 40 is also not necessarily working to try to be in TV right now. Like what are like some of the people take all sorts of routes into television and film, and so it's sort of like a much bigger sort of existential version of the crossword puzzle I was talking about. If you're banging a head against this TV wall, think about something else. What else is there in the world? And then you can come back to this in a year or 2 years, and you'll have some other amazing experience under your belt because of it. And then finally, I will say that there are, in the interest of, there are multiple avenues into television. There are more now than ever, and I know it's a cliche, but it used to be that there were only a few entryways into the industry, and now we have people being hired off YouTube and social media, things that they're doing, and people are going out and making their own films on iPhones and getting horror movie deals, and there are lots of things. And taking Micah's advice to heart, don't do things as a stepping stone, but do things that you're excited about and you're excited to share with the world, however you want to share them, or however you want to, whether it's writing or filmmaking or anything. And you throw enough seeds onto the ground and something's going to sprout.
As someone who's written so much multicam network sitcom, what are your thoughts on the recent dominance of single cam streaming dramedies like The Bear and Hacks? Yeah, where do you draw the line on what a comedy or a sitcom is, or do you see like comedy and sitcom as differently?
It's a great question, and there are so many answers and things to talk about around it. There's a big subsection of people, or possibly section of people, who are like, The Bear is not a comedy. The Bear is not a comedy, and it's not The Bear's fault. I almost think it's more just like the divisions that used to be very clear are no longer as appropriate as they could be for what TV is like today. It used to be that half-hour shows were comedies and hour-long shows were dramas, and it was very straightforward and very simple. And I'm in that other subsection of people who say that some of the funniest television in the last few years have been some of these hour-long shows. I think Succession was one of the funniest shows of this past decade. It didn't always feel that way, and technically it's a serialized drama. But
I always thought the same way, like Breaking Bad. One of the things that separated it from all those other dark anti-hero shows that were kind of trying to be Breaking Bad was how funny it was, and that's such a key ingredient in it.
So to me, it's almost just like the categorizations are at fault here, where the masks, the two masks, aren't as separate as they used to be, and we have really funny hour-longs, and we have more dramatic half hours, and we have a lot of stuff that's in between. And
is that exciting to you or scary to you as someone who's written?
For me, that's exciting because my career trajectory has been, individual jokes and bits at Letterman to, 3 or 4 minute long pieces at Letterman to half-hour shows. And to me, like bringing comedy into hour-longs and stretching out the storytelling is even more exciting. One of the qualities that always attracted people to half hours is that familiarity. It's like I want to sit down with my surrogate TV family and see what they're up to, and I want to laugh because I know that as soon as Raymond's mom says this, they're going to cut to Raymond's brother, and he's not even going to say anything, but I'm going to laugh because I know he's about how he's going to react to that, and we know these characters so well. That we love watching them in these situations. And so weirdly, that I think that's why why do people still watch Friends now? It's because they've already been watching Friends. like you already have that familiarity. You already have that surrogate family. And it's harder because the economics aren't there and because of the way people watch streaming TV, it's much more difficult to, you used to be able to put on a show. Some sitcoms were hits out of the gate, but a lot of them hit their stride. How I Met Your Mother is included in their second or third or fourth season because the creators found the rhythm, the actors found the character and the dynamics with the other characters, and the audience got used to seeing these characters, and they grew to understand these characters and love them.
All right, here's a question: do my pilots need to be packed with belly laughs? I think this kind of ties into what we were talking about, types of comedy earlier.
Yeah.
And I think the simple answer for this, if it's a comedy and that's what it's going for, you need to deliver whatever it is, right?
That's great. That's a great way to say it. Yeah. Yeah. Deliver on the promise of what it should be. Think about your pilots or your specs place in that huge group of files that a reader has gotten, whether it's someone at an agency or a network or reading a showrunner reading to be hired. And again, never do anything that doesn't feel natural to you. Never do anything that feels like you're doing it purely strategically. But think about your spec among all those other specs. And I will say that it is rare to find a half hour that actually makes me laugh on the first page or two, because either it's going to feel false or it's going to feel too big. You don't know the characters yet. It's hard to find the situation. If you can accomplish that in a natural way, that's a huge leg up. But it's really difficult, and so something to think about.
Is there any final advice or words of wisdom you want to share with our audience here?
No, I've used it all up.
Nothing to say to you guys. Chris Harris.
Phil's Coffee on Ventura is a wonderful place to work. There you go.
There you go. Awesome. Fantastic. That's the secret to success. Take care of yourselves, everyone. Happy writing. And thanks for being here. Chris, again, thank you so much, everyone.